Hello, and welcome to What's Your Story? We have a fabulous guest today with an incredible story. And so you're going to want to stay with us through the whole show because she's really remarkable. Welcome, Mary Kelly.
Thank you so much for letting me be here today. I love this idea that we share our stories to motivate other people. It's fantastic.
Well, we're really fortunate, you and I, that we've gotten to do this. And you have such an incredible story. Mary she's an international speaker. She speaks all over the world, motivating people and teaching leadership skills to people. And tell them why you're qualified to teach leadership skills.
Well, qualified, let's hope that we provide value. It's all about providing value to our audiences and helping them see what we want them to see. But as you know, I spent about 25 years on active duty in the Navy. I was very fortunate to have a good career. Most of that was in Asia. And during that time, in the military, you get responsibilities and leadership early on.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate to have that very early on. I did get to go to the Naval Academy, which we teach leadership. We help people develop leadership skills. And the great thing about our military is I think we've got some of the best leaders on the planet.
Oh, definitely.
So I get to learn from some of the very best.
I think people are always shocked, though, when they see you and you're so petite and so pretty, and then they say, Commander Mary Kelly, wow, a commander in the Navy, that's amazing.
Well, I came in at an interesting time. I was only in the 8th class of women to go to the Naval Academy. So it was a little bit new for other people. But when you're 17 years old, you don't kind of realize that that's a new thing. You say, oh, okay, there we go, let's do this. You don't think too hard about it. And I think that that's one of the areas where some people overthink things, and they sometimes make things just a little bit too hard. But it was an interesting time. It was definitely a time of transition.
And as a commander to Navy, do you call them troops?
We do call them troops, yes we do.
Yeah, to Navy troops. Did you find that there was resistance to you being a woman?
No. I think good leadership is good leadership, and people want good leadership, and I think people don't care if it's from a man or a woman or fill in the blank, whatever people are labeling anything. People just want good, strong leadership right now. And in the absence of leadership, as you know, people get lost. They follow anything. They become misguided. They become unfocused. They become unproductive. And that's where people, I think, need to really step it up right now. I think nationwide, worldwide, we need better leaders. If you look at all the big world problems right now, most of them can be solved by better leadership, or at least improved.
Yes. Oh, yes, for sure. For sure. And you taught at the Naval Academy and also at the Air Force Academy.
I did. So my career was mostly spent in Asia. I'm what's considered a Westpac sailor, so I went west. I went to the Pacific and stayed there. My very last tour in the Navy was back teaching at the Naval Academy, and it was my only tour on the mainland of the United States.
Amazing.
And I retired out of there and then kind of decided I should see parts of the United States and the world that I hadn't seen. Got in the car and drove for a while. I think it was way too many John Denver songs and maybe too many Coors commercials, and I kind of got to Colorado and I looked around and I thought I could spend some time here. And someone said, hey, the Air Force Academy is looking for an economist. I have a PhD in economics, and so that was helpful.
Yes.
And they said, we're just looking for one semester. So I was there for 10 years.
That one semester lasted a long time.
It was a long semester.
Now, you're still in Colorado?
I'm based out of Dallas. I'm based out of Dallas, Texas, and I still have some ties to Colorado, so I bounce back and forth.
Yeah, because I know that a lot of the people from the Colorado Speakers Association, act like you belong to them.
Yes. So I am owned by both the North Texas chapter and the Colorado chapter.
Yes. And Mary, you've had a few trials and tribulations in your life. If people look at you and you're so pretty and you look like you're such a success, they wouldn't imagine that you've ever had challenges. But I know that you were married to the love of your life for about 15 years or so, and you lost him to cancer. Can you share any of that, what that was like to go through?
So you're kind to ask. I was married to a Marine, And anytime you can get a great Marine in your life, that's a big plus. I was very, very fortunate. And he was a Vietnam era Marine, kind of in the tail end. And he was healthy until he was not. And he had a terrible cancer diagnosis that they think probably was derived from some Agent Orange exposure. And so he was diagnosed and dead in less than 2 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And so there's a lot of lessons that go into that. So, as we talked before, and you've been through this cancer scare as well, and the trials that go with that, we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
No.
Tomorrow's not a guarantee.
No.
And our life is this finite number of unknown minutes. And I think every day we get to wake up, when we get to wake up, and we get to embrace what we get to do, and we get to do it. It's all about that. Some people say, well, I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have to take the kids here, and I have to run. I think, well, we get to do that. We don't have to take the kids to soccer practice. We get to take the kids to soccer practice. We don't have to go to the store. We get to go to the store because we've got stores full of shelves of things that we didn't have to work that hard to get there. We're so fortunate. And losing him was a big kick in the head for gratitude that we really just have to be grateful for every single day. And when I lost him, I didn't know what to tell people when they would say, how are you? So I called a friend of mine, and her husband had gone down in a plane crash. He was one of my classmates from the Naval Academy. And I said, Tammy, what do you tell people? And she said, I was lucky to have him. That's what I tell people. And I said, that was a life-changing thing for me to hear, because I needed to have that response, because I needed to also remind myself, you were lucky. You were lucky to have that man in your life. You're lucky wherever you are right now. And I think it's very easy for us, if you watch the news, you can get consumed by all the negativity. And we have to look around and say, you know what, we're so lucky every single day to wake up where we wake up. We are so lucky to have the opportunities we have. We're so lucky to have the gifts of everything going on around us. And some people don't look at these last few years as a gift. And every day is a gift. It's what we do with it. And I know that sounds like something that you'd see on a bumper sticker.
Some motivational speaker would say that.
I know. But we are really lucky. And it's easy to fall into the trap of complaining and feeling like, oh, poor me, or, just negativity. So I think that's the big lesson that I got out of that. I remember going back to the house, and one of my neighbors came over. And I've just left the hospital, and one of my neighbors was complaining about another neighbor because, well, his grass wasn't cut in the last few weeks. And I was like, really?
What?
Really? Joe just died, and you're worried about grass? See, my priorities just shifted.
Yeah.
And I talk to people now, and I say, let's not confuse the inconveniences with problems. A real problem, that's life-threatening. You've been there. It's a real problem. An inconvenience, you get cut off in traffic, maybe your plane got delayed, you get the middle seat, whatever it is. We can't confuse the problems with the inconveniences.
I like that. I've never heard that before. Not to confuse problems with inconveniences. I like that a lot. See, I thought my cancer was inconvenient. It was at a very inconvenient time. My sister was so sick, and then the cancer came, and it was really inconvenient. And I guess it was a problem, but it didn't seem like it as much as it seemed like, all right, let's just get through this sort of thing. But I believe this is all mindset. The way you are now, you've always been this way, though. You've got such a positive mindset. And I heard you speak about a month ago at an event, and I was so impressed because you just give and give and give, and you gave so much information that people could use and walk away with, and you do it in such a comfortable style. The audience just feels like they're having a conversation with you. How did you get to be so good?
Well, thank you for the compliment. I don't know. I think part of it is my background. I'm Irish. We like to tell stories. And around the kitchen table, around dinner time, you would tell stories. My parents would always ask us, how was your day? And when you come from a largish family, if you don't get to the point and you don't say something of value, you're going to get interrupted. And my family is terrible about the interruptions. We interrupt each other constantly. So there's a little bit of an element there. And then when I was in the Navy, I was an intelligence officer, which means you have to brief people. And they had a very strict script. This is how you start, and these are the words, and don't use any voice inflection because that is very bad, and we make it all sound like this. And I tried to spice things up It did not go well. They did not have a sense of humor about this. And I remember one time I was supposed to be doing an intelligence briefing about some operations in the Arabian Gulf, and I had interjected that we lost a valued member of the team, and wasn't this sad? And what had happened was we'd lost one of our Navy Dolphins. And so I made this whole big thing about this terrible loss, and I said, and here's the picture, and it was a dolphin. And it was sort of funny, but I was like, well, there's losses everywhere. Yeah. Senior people did not find that funny at all. So, you have to kind of learn your audience, and I learned it along the way. But then I taught school. Mm-hmm. I've been a teacher since 1987 at the university level, and I've been trained by 19-year-olds. 19-year-olds are very good at giving you very quick feedback. They're going to roll back in their chair, or what, you're going to get all that. So I think I've been trained by 19-year-olds, yes, which is helpful, and you learn to respond to whatever's going on in their head. I have to be in the audience head, like you. You know this too. You can't be in your own head. That's when people say, well, do you get nervous? Well, I don't get nervous because I have to be in their head. If I was in my head, I could get nervous.
Yes.
But you can't be there. You have to be thinking what they're thinking, and you have to be quick to respond to whatever they're worried about at that moment. And if you see somebody who's got a line of thought, or all of a sudden, something pops in, you have to go with where they're going, audience-wise in their head. And you do this all the time too. So I think that's what years and years and years of teaching school gave me, again, as a gift. So I think it's a combination of family, I think it's a combination of teaching, I think it's a combination of just loving what it is we do.
Yes, yes. It's so important, because I think right now with this pandemic going on, so many people have gotten into depression. Mm-hmm. They don't even know they're in depression, and then they are. And I hear so many people complaining about having to wear a mask, having to be vaccinated, about the people who don't get vaccinated, about the people who don't wear masks, about, the fact that they have to go to the grocery store less often and get their things. And I mean, it's just amazing how much complaining I hear going on. And I just try to mark that up to people are very uncomfortable. And they're in this depression. Do you have any ideas for them how to deal with that depression, or how to move forward?
I kind of do. And I also understand that in every crisis, challenge, or change, and I saw this during the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War, and different crises and challenges and changes, that people go through 4 steps. The first 4 steps, they kind of reject the situation. And there's still people who just go, no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to deal with it. There is that rejection mindset. And then they get into the recognition. Okay, maybe I have to do this. And we've all done it. You get out of your car, you go up to the store, you look at the sign, go, oh, go back to the car. And there's that element of, I'm short of time, I'm stressed out, my stress bucket was already full before all this started, and there's just this extra layer on top of this. And we get into that recognition phase of, all right, we got to do with these things. It's going to take more time. And then we get into stage 3, and I mapped these out on a cocktail napkin one time, and now I actually use them. The stage 3 is the realization stage, which is, I got to step up my game. I have to be better for the people around me. I have to be better for my family. It's going to take more time. I've got to learn new things. I've got to tap into new technologies. I've got to adapt, and that's hard. People don't like change. Even though the words used to describe people who don't like change tend to be negative, most of us don't like change.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. And then we get into the resolution phase. Okay, we got this. We can do this together. We can support each other. We're in it. Let's do it. So the rejection, the recognition, the realization, and the resolution stages. Well, a lot of people cycle through all 4 of those with coffee every morning. You wake up and you go, oh, we're still doing this. Here we go. Those first 4 stages are very myopic. It's all about me. It's circle the wagons. It's my house, my job, my kids, my mask, my store, my homeschooling, my work from home. Very much circle the wagons, protect yourself. When people are threatened by anything, a crisis, challenge, or change, it can be a software update. It can be a new leadership at your position at work. It can be a shift in your family dynamic. Somebody new comes in. You go through these transitions, and you think about how it's going to affect you. Well, leaders jump really quickly into stage 5. And stage 5 is understanding this is the new reality. This is the way forward. And I think this is what I struggled with a little bit after my husband died, was I didn't know the way forward. And I was rejecting that new reality. I was very much in the rejection stage. I would look for him in the house, not consciously, but it was just there.
Yes.
And so once you get into the new reality and you embrace that, then you can move on to the new realignment, which in business is, how does this affect my strategic leadership? How does this affect my organization? How do I focus on other people? How do I serve other people? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? What will I say in a year is a great outcome of having this crisis or challenge or change? So when we think about that, we say, well, this whole COVID thing, what will we say was a great outcome of this? And so I ask people sometimes who get a little depressed, I say, okay, so what has gotten better for you in the past 2 years? What's gotten better? And people say, well, I learned technology, or I did this. And then we go deeper. I'm like, no, what's gotten better for you? And people say, you know what? I rediscovered my love of art. I'm taking this amazing class with this amazing instructor here in Nevada, Miss Judy. Or I am a better daughter to my parents, or I'm a better spouse to my partner, or I'm a better parent to my kids, or I'm a better friend. We can look at how things have been made better on a deeper level. And I think that that's where a lot of people need to get out of their depression, is to focus externally instead of internally. It's very easy for us to kind of wallow in self-pity. It is. And you can look around and go, oh, poor me, and this, that. But if you're wallowing in this, it doesn't help you. And mentally, it's very hard to get yourself out of that. And I do remember when my husband died, and I thought, well, this is what depression feels like. Wow. This is paralyzing. And I knew I had to get out of it, and for a while I did not know how. And then I realized, okay, somebody told me, they said, wherever you are, you're 2 steps ahead of somebody else. And I did not feel like I was 2 steps ahead of anybody. And then somebody says, no, but somebody just lost somebody yesterday, and you're 3 months into this. You're a couple steps ahead. And I thought, oh, that's a real good point. I actually am. And then you start to see the way out. So for many people who get sunk into these dark places, you get into the dark space, I'm like, so focus on the fact that you are 2 steps ahead of somebody else. And it's incumbent upon us to reach behind us and grab that person, and just like a good NASCAR bump, we're going to give them that push forward. And that's why we're here.
Wow. That's good advice. That's really good advice. I hope you guys are taking this down, taking notes, because this is really good. It is. Change is so uncomfortable, and so many of us, we want to stay right there in our comfort zone, and we don't want to reach out. We don't want to try something new, but like you say, change is the only thing that we can depend on, because it is going to keep happening and keep happening. One of the things I've learned over the years is that when things go bad, they're going to get better. And when things get better, they're going to get worse. It's just like this roller coaster of life. It gets better, it gets worse, it gets better, it gets worse. How can we focus on everything getting better and staying better?
So one of the things I like to do is the what if. So what if things get worse? Let's map it out. What's the worst possible outcomes of this particular scenario, and be specific. And so you map that out and say, okay, if this happens, what is the worst case scenario? What do we need to plan for? Let's plan for that. And then we say, okay, what is the best case scenario to come out of all this? And let's plan for that. Because the reality is somewhere in the middle. And if you're prepared for both, then it doesn't matter what gets thrown at you. You're prepared either way. And mentally, we have to prepare that. So for example, some people have a goal or a challenge, and they're just struggling to achieve this goal. And maybe it's a work goal, maybe it's a personal goal, whatever it is. So let's say their work goal is, I want to increase my sales by 10% between now and the end of the year. Okay, so I want to increase my sales. And then they say, oh, I can't do it. Well, why can't you do it? Well, there's obstacles. Well, what are the obstacles? Let's map out the obstacles. Well, I'm worried about the economy, and supply chains are an issue, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen, and whatever this looks like. Okay, so let's be very specific on the obstacles. And then let's brainstorm on solutions. Because once we brainstorm on the solutions, our brains are really powerful.
Right.
Our brain goes to the solution. We say, all right, if we're going to do this, then the solution is make 10 more phone calls a week. Maybe you don't have to show up in person. That's a time saver. That's a benefit. So what can you do instead? How can you provide value? How can you provide outreach? What kind of information, education, what are you providing that will help people so that they'll take your call? What can you develop during this time? And then brainstorm on those solutions, and then from that, map out the action steps and give yourself deadlines. I was a teacher for over 30 years, and I would always look at my students on Monday morning when a paper was due, and they were all tired. I said, "You're tired." And they said, "Yes, we wrote the paper." I'm like, "Let me guess, you started writing it last night." I said, "Why do you do that?" And they would say, "Oh, Dr. Kelly, we do our best writing the night before." And I would laugh. I would say, "You do your only writing the night before. How would you know the difference?" But the truth is, we all work to deadlines. So if you don't give people some deadlines, they're not going to get things done. And that's true for you too. You got to give yourself deadlines
Right.
and assign those on your to-do list, on your calendar, like it's a promise to somebody else. You are your most important person. When you let yourself down, that's a terrible feeling. So don't do it. Assign some deadlines and then work to it. Get to work. Taking that action step forward, that first step, is really powerful, because action trumps fear. Action takes that motion forward. And when we can take the action, and that's why when you get that terrible diagnosis that you got, and other people get this, or you get really bad news, they get paralyzed, like deer in the headlights or a bunny in the grass. They just freeze. You got to give them that next step forward. You
Right.
got to say, okay, here's the baby step. Here's what you do next. Here's this. And when people are stressed out, and a lot of people are right now, as leaders, as peers, as friends, we have to help them dissect what used to be not so complicated, maybe an 8-hour project, and now maybe we have to break it down into 8 one-hour projects, and we have to talk them through it. Because there's so much stress in people's heads right now that they can't focus as much as they could before. And this is part of that stress bucket just getting filled up. So those are some of the things that I try to practice anyway when I feel
Yes.
like I'm not getting things done, or, I'm like, let's get things done, Mary.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm a list maker, and I'm always making lists of things that need to be done, things that need to be done, and then I put them in priority, and then I'll get up in the morning and I think, okay, if I start right away at the top of the list, I can get some of these done before noon. And if I do that, I have a very productive day. But if I get a couple phone calls, or I stop and have coffee, or I run down to the store for something, and I don't get right on that list in the morning, my day just goes pfft. And then that night I go, what did I do today? I don't know what I did today. And I think during this pandemic, a lot of people have been doing that same sort of thing, because when I talk to them, they go, I don't know where the day went. I didn't get anything done. I don't know where the week went. I was planning to do this, but I didn't. And I believe that has to do with the depression, with the fact that we don't really know how to operate during this type of change that we're having. A lot of people don't know how.
And it's sustained stress. So, for example, if you think it's going to be short-term stress, like, whatever that could be, like, an operation because you're going to, have a heart surgery or something like that. You go in, you come out, you have a little recovery, and then you kind of expect your life to be back. Like, it's a short-term change. It's significant, but it's relatively short-lived. This is going to go on till we die. Whenever that is. I mean, we're stuck with this for forever. It's a virus. It's out there. It's mutating. People are worried about Delta, but there's another 1,132 viruses out there right now that we know of. So this is something we're always going to have to contend with, and it's just another layer of stress on top of everything else. And you hear this all the time with people saying, well, I don't have work-life balance, or I need better work-life balance. And I don't think it's so much work-life balance. I think it's the stress bucket versus the happiness bucket. And in the stress bucket world, you had your work and your friends and your passions and your hobbies and all those things, and your children and parents and whatever was normal things that you're juggling. And then you throw on top of this all the pandemic things, and then all the rules associated with the pandemic, and all the changing things on top of that, and then mask mandates and no mask mandates, and what are we doing in school, and just all the changing things. It's sustained stress. And the problem, I think, is on the happiness bucket side, that's what needs to be balanced. It's not work-life. It's stress bucket, happiness bucket. Are we deriving happiness from the work we do? Are we deriving happiness from the fact that we get to go to the store? Mm-hmm. Are we deriving happiness from social belonging, from time alone, from reflection time, with time in the car? Even if there's bad traffic, are we getting that sense of happiness and satisfaction? Because that's really where the balance is. Work-life balance doesn't mean work less. Because for some people, what are you going to do with that extra time? Are you going to waste it? Are you going to do something productive? What does the rest of your life look like? And what are you crafting for yourself? And that's based on what gives you happiness. A lot of people think, well, I just need more time off so that I can just go relax and not do anything. Well, does that make you happy? And if it makes you happy, great. If it doesn't make you happy, then you're always going to feel that sense of overwhelm and stress, and that bucket is going to stay really, really full.
I guess.
Well, and you know people who they should be really happy.
Uh-huh.
They look like they have it all, and then they're miserable.
Yes.
And you wonder why. And it's all internal. It's
It is.
all mental.
It is. You know, I lived in Africa for about 10 years, and I was always amazed that some of the poorest people in some of the poorest villages would come to work with a smile on their face, and I knew that they had to walk 8 miles to get there, or they had to take 3 different combis that were stuffed with 16 people to get to work, and yet they'd come in with a big smile on their face, and their attitudes were so great, and they'd have another change of clothes there at the office where they'd come in and change into their work clothes. And then when they got ready to go home, they would change into their go-home clothes. And I never heard complaining from these people. And it was so exciting because, you know, they didn't have near what we have in America, and yet they lived a happy life.
Because it's a decision. You know, happiness is a decision. So some people will sometimes say, well, I'm in a relationship and I'm not happy. Well, did you decide to not be happy? Like, what made it not happy? Maybe you made the decisions, consciously or unconsciously, to not be happy. And if that's true, then you can reverse that. So
Yes.
we can consciously wake up every morning and decide to be happy, regardless of what gets thrown at us. Now, some things are going to irritate us, but those are the inconveniences.
Yes, I love that, inconveniences. I really do love that. I'm going to take that away and put it in my book and remember that for myself. That's been wonderful. Mary Kelly, you are a wonderful guest. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would just like to tell somebody about you?
I love dogs and I love wine, kind of in that order, depending on the day. But also my entire family was military. So I grew up with this idea of service. And my older brother was a Marine helicopter pilot. His wife was Navy. My husband was a Marine. My younger sister was the Air Force officer. She married a naval officer as well. My younger brother was a Navy pilot. My younger brother married a school teacher, and we really need her in our family. She gives us this perspective that sometimes the rest of us really need. And we, the 4 of us, my siblings, we talk in short, choppy sentences to each other. And that doesn't always work with everybody. And one of the things my sister-in-law taught me, because she's a teacher as well, and she teaches younger ones, was we have to communicate the way others receive. It's not about how we communicate. And we tend to communicate in a way that works for us,
Yes.
not in a way that works for the intended receiver. So anybody who's ever been in I'm so careful because I've been trained by lawyers, a mostly monogamous, occasionally romantic relationship with another person, you've had an argument. And a lot of times you go back and go, what in the world were we arguing about, and how did we get into that? And it winds up being miscommunication. And you pause and you think, okay, if the person I love the most on this planet and I can have a miscommunication, where am I missing it with other people? And it's just one of those things that really strikes me that today I think we've got to do more communication, we've got to be better at communication, and we have to communicate in a way that works for others, not for us. And with my siblings, we text each other. It is short and choppy, and other people would look at it and say, wow, that's really rude. And for us, it's perfect communication, but it's not perfect with everybody.
Yes, yes. And when we're communicating with another person, there's really a lot of things going on at the same time in the person's brain, because there's what I thought I said and what I actually did say, and what you heard and what you thought you heard, and vice versa. And so all of that's going on in the brain at one time. So communication is the biggest problem in most of our homes as well as in business.
I think it's the number one way we get things done, and it's the number one way we mess things up.
I like that.
It just is.
Yeah.
And think about all the things that could be solved if we just communicated a little bit more. And with my business leaders, I ask them the question. I say, do you think you're communicating well? And by and large, they all say yes. I say, so if you think you're doing enough communication, you might be breaking even. But chances are you're not. And if I ask your people, are you getting enough good information from your leadership, from your boss, from your team members? Most people say no. We get a lot of junk, but we don't get a lot of good information. And it's one of the things I think I have to work on it every single day. How can I be a better communicator? Do I need to do more of it? Yes. Who do I need to communicate with? Clients and people and friends. For a lot of us, we've reached out to more friends during this time, and that's really healthy, because maybe before we would be passing each other in airports or traveling a lot, and we just didn't make time for friends. And so sometimes we've been able to listen a little bit more to what they're saying and be a little bit better overall at communication in all aspects of our life.
Exactly. Well, we're running out of time, but I really, really appreciate you being here. It's always such a pleasure to be with you, to be around you, to be in one of your programs. I've had the good fortune to be in a program of yours a few years ago and then again last month, and it's just such a pleasure, Mary, to have you here, and thank you for joining us. Would you tell my audience where they can reach you if they would like to hire you, or they would like to buy one of your books or get to know more about you, maybe a website or a number?
Sure, and thank you so much for the very kind comments. I feel so grateful to be with you. You're an amazing, accomplished person, and I love your energy, so thank you for that. So people can find me at Productive Leaders, because who wants an unproductive leader? Productiveleaders.com. And if you go to productiveleaders.com/free, there is my productivity system, the weekly productivity sheets, the daily productivity sheets, the business plan, the 5-minute business plan, the 5-minute vision plan, and all kinds of other things. And for some of the audience today, there's also the checklist for in case of emergency, break glass. And one of the things I learned was I've got to be better for my friends when they start to lose people who are close to them. So I made a checklist for this. It's what we do in the military. You make a checklist. And so I made a checklist, and that is there too. It's called In Case of Emergency, Break Glass.
I have to tell you, I have that checklist.
Yes, ma'am.
I got it when you were speaking here in Vegas, and it really is wonderful. I think every person who is out there that, well, just whether they're going to die tomorrow or not, you need to put all that information down in one place where if you get sick or if you pass away or even if you're in another country and you can't get home or something, that information is there for somebody to get it, and to have it.
It's not an if. It's a when. We're all going.
Yeah.
So that's it. We don't get to know when, and that's not our decision to make most days, but we do have to be prepared. And some people are afraid of that. And again, that's where action trumps fear, because if you can take that step forward and plan, then you don't have to be scared.
I find it amazing. I really loved it when I printed it off, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I think every single one of you should go onto Mary's website, productiveleaders.com/free, and get that it's called In
Case of Emergency, Break Glass.
In Case of Emergency, Break Glass. Get that, because it's such a valuable tool. And every one of you that's watching, my mouth isn't working, every one of you that's watching this show, you should go onto her website and get that, because it's a fabulous thing for you to have for yourself and for your loved ones. It's very, very important. Thank you for being here today. It's been our pleasure to have you here, and I hope every time you come to Vegas, you'll come back and do this again.
Oh, I'd be so honored. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great, great show.
Thank you. And if you would like to be on our show and you have an incredible story, you can just email me, Judy, at judymorio.com, regarding what's my story, and let us know what story you have that you'd like to share with the world.
I was really lucky to work at both the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. I've been a professor for over 20 years. I've taught economics, leadership management, and a few history classes. And it's a lot of fun for me to work with young people because they're energetic and they're motivated, and I find them smart and funny. So I feel very lucky that I was able to have that experience. I cannot tell you how many fabulous leaders I was allowed to work for. These were men and women who gave me all kinds of advice. They gave me great mentorship. They gave me great leadership so that ideally I would take that leadership and be a better leader myself. And I will always be unbelievably grateful to those people for those lessons. Real leadership is tough today, and partly because our leaders are getting mixed messages. Their boss wants one thing from them, the people working for them want something else, and it's just tough. And leaders today are being squeezed. They're being squeezed from the top or their board of directors, and they're being squeezed from the bottom. And meanwhile, they've got limited amounts of resources, limited amounts of time, and a limited budget, and they've got to produce more and better than ever before. We need to differentiate between problems and inconveniences in our life. So losing somebody, your child gets a terrible diagnosis, or there's a crisis in the family, or your home is destroyed by a natural disaster or whatever, that's a problem. The day-to-day stuff, somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody cuts ahead of you in line, people are rude, those are just inconveniences. Be consistent. That's one of the complaints a lot of employees have about their leaders is they don't get enough good feedback, they don't know when they're doing something right or wrong, and their leaders are not consistent. In every aspect of my life, whatever job the Navy put me into, I joined the association that was closest to that job. When I was an HR director, I joined SHRM. When I was a chief of police, I joined the Chiefs of Police Association because I need to be around the people who get me in that job, and I need to learn from other people. And this is why I see associations as being so valuable. I love working with my meeting planners. My meeting planners are my partners in the event, and that's how I view the relationship. I show up and I want to make sure if they need anything at all, if someone else drops out of the program, I always have a backup program ready to go because planning a meeting is tough. So my job when I show up and in the preparedness part is to make sure that I reduce stress and uncertainty for my meeting planners.
Yeah.